So in this video I'm going to teach you how to generate G-code using toolpaths. So first of all, I've got this drawing here. I've got a 2 foot by 4 foot say piece of plywood. I'm going to cut all these parts out for my project. So I need to tell this that I'm going to be using a router. Mastercam works with lots of different CNC machines, so I'm going to come up to Machine, Router, Default, and by doing that it should put this machine group here in my toolpath box. And if this is already in your toolpath box, you don't need to do it a second time. One time is sufficient. And if you don't have this toolpath box here, you do need to get that on there, and to do that you would go to View and then click on Toolpaths. So once we have this in here, I'm going to cut out all these parts. But before I cut the parts out, I want to cut any holes that are in the parts and drill any holes also. So to drill the holes, you would come up here to Toolpath and Drill. And then it says here, select one or more entities that you want to drill. I'm going to click on these points here, and I'll click also on the center of this circle here and hit OK. Now I need to find it comes up with this box, and I kind of work my way down. So first I'm going to go up to Tool, and right here I don't have any tools, so I'll hit Select Library Tool. This is the Wood Research Laboratory tool library. If this isn't here, you'll need to click Open and find the library. The tool library will be on Brightspace, so you will be able to download that to your machine. So I'm going to say I wanted to drill a 1/4 inch diameter hole on all those. I'm going to hit Tool 4, which is a 1/4 inch diameter. I'll hit OK, and then sometimes this may come up. Just hit OK on that too. It shows me right here that I'm using Tool 4. And next thing I need to do is come down to this one, linking parameters, and tell it the depth of cut I'm doing. So it's always a negative, so I'm going to say negative 0.75. I'll hit OK. It shows you, adds this information here, which is what I just added, and then it shows you this yellow line, so that means it's going to drill this one, lift up, move to this one, lift up, move to this one. If that looks okay, then we can go on to our next operation, which would be to cut these 3 holes here. So those are called contours. So I would click on Contour. Now there's different ways to select geometry, and it defaults to this chain, which means if I select this line, it will select all the lines that connect to it. I could also put a window around what I want to select, or if it's just a point, click on a point, or if it's just a single line, click on that. So I'll stick with the chain, and I'll come up here and I'll select this, and you notice it highlighted the whole thing. And then also you notice this arrow, and that arrow is going clockwise. Anytime you cut a hole inside of a part, it'll give you a little cleaner cut if you go counterclockwise. So to reverse this, I'm going to click on this arrow here, and you notice the arrow reversed. And now I'm going to come up here and click on this circle. Well, that's going the wrong direction too, so I'm going to switch that, and I'll hit OK. And now I'll come up to Tool, and kind of our workhorse tool is this 3/8 diameter, Tool 1. So I'm going to use that to cut the part, and it came up with this modified toolbox. Just select OK. Now working my way down, I'll skip holder, I'll come up to cut parameters. And on this one, what I want to tell it is whether I'm cutting on the left or the right of the arrow, or if I'm cutting on the center. And note if I change this to right, it changes this little box here, and I could turn the computer off, which then it's right on the center. So generally, you think about the direction that arrow is going. So it's going counterclockwise, and I'll want to cut on the left side to get my tool on the center of that. So I'm going to switch this to left, and I'll make sure this computer is on, and then I'll go to depth of cut. So as a rule of thumb, whatever the diameter of the bit is, that's the maximum depth of cut for each pass. So this depth of cut is depth of cut for each pass. So I'm going to check mark that. I'm going to change this to the diameter of the bit I'm using, so 0.375, and then I'll come to lead in, lead out. So basically the bit can just dive right in and start cutting, or it can ramp into the cut and ramp out of the cut. Sometimes you might find that it'll do a little burn mark if it dives right into the cut. So the ramping in, ramping out gives you a little cleaner cut, but I really have had very little problems with that burning. So I usually turn this off, because the ramp in, ramp out can cause problems if parts are close by. So I'll uncheck that. Breakthrough, we don't have to worry about that. Multi-passes, we're not going to worry about. Tabs, if you're cutting small parts, then sometimes you might want to turn tabs on. Now here we're just cutting the hole inside the part, so obviously we don't have to turn this on. I'll go to linking parameters. Here again is the overall depth of cut, so I'm going to say a negative 0.75. So it's going to take 2 passes to cut this hole, since I'm going 0.375 at a time. I'll hit OK. Notice it gives me this blue line here. That's the center line of the router bit. It's on the inside of these 2 parts, so that's good. That's what I want. But I forgot to click on this circle too. So in order to add this, I need to come up here and click on geometry. And then inside this box, I can right mouse button and do add. So there again, it gives me this dialog box. I'm going to stick with this default of chain. I'll come up here and click that. It's going the wrong direction again. I'll click my arrow to switch it, and I'll hit OK, and then I hit OK again. But it doesn't show me my blue lines here, and it's got a red X here. So anytime that you change anything on your toolpaths, your bits, your add geometry, the direction of cut, it needs to regenerate those toolpaths. So in order to regenerate them, you hit this red X here, and it regenerates, called dirty operations. And now you notice it has those 3 parts cut out. So the next thing I would want to do is cut the outside of all these parts. So it's going to be a contour also, and I'm going to default to this chain here. And now for the inside parts, I wanted to go counterclockwise, but for the outside of my parts, I want to go clockwise. That will give me a little cleaner cut. So if I click here on this line, it's going to go clockwise. If I were to click on this end of the line, it's going to show it counterclockwise. If you mess up, you can always change it like I showed you. So I'm going to add this part here, this part, keep going around. Oh, that's the wrong direction, so I'm going to switch it here. That's the wrong direction. I'll switch it here and keep going. Okay, so those are all good. I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to come up here to toolpath. There again, I'm going to use the 3/8 tool, so I can just click on that one and come up here to cut parameters. I want to go on the left side, which would be the outside of the part since I'm going clockwise. So I'm OK there. And it does default usually to the last operations you did, the last things that you entered. So be aware of that. But I would always go in and check and make sure that it defaulted to the right ones. So depth of cut, it's got this checked. 0.375. That's good. Now say, as I'm working my way down here, if these parts are small, I might be worried about after it cuts one out that it starts bouncing around a little bit and gets hit by the router bit as it's cutting the next part off. So I might want to add tabs. So to add tabs, you just simply check mark that, and you can do automatic if you want. And right now it says create tabs on shapes that are less than 2 inches by 2 inches. Well, I want to tab everything, so I'm going to hit tab all. And here are the size of the tabs. So you might want to make this a little heavier. 0.02 is not very much material. So I'm going to hit OK on, well, before I hit OK, I'm going to go to linking parameters and make sure my depth of cut is right. Yes, that's right. So I'll hit OK. So as you can see, it's got my blue lines on the outside of all this. So that all looks good. If one of these was going on the inside, then all you would do is come up to geometry, and you would have to highlight these until you find the one that's going the wrong direction, and then you can right mouse button on that and you can say reverse, and it'll change the direction of that one. But we're okay. So now I want to make sure, before I actually cut parts on the CNC router, I want to make sure that they're cutting right on the computer. So I want to make sure all of these are check marked, so I can hit this green triangle, and then I can click on this, which is verify selected operations, and it's going to bring up another window. So this window is going to show the parts being cut out. So all I have to do is hit play. You can see it quickly cuts them out. I can rewind and do that, and I can slow things down a little bit. And let's see if we can see it cutting a little bit better. So that looks pretty good. I want to look at this in a little better way. I'm going to go to View, Isometric, and I'm going to rewind again, and I'm going to expand this view. I'll hit play. So you can see that there's some lines across this. So this is a red flag to me that for some reason this bit, after it cuts one part and moves to the other, it's not lifting up enough. So I need to check that and figure out what is going on there. So that's one good thing about this view, is you can pick up where it's kind of messing up. So I also am interested in where the tabs are. So I can dynamically rotate this and try to see if I can see any tabs. And so if I zoom in now with my center wheel mouse button, this shows me there's going to be a tab here, here, here. So all these little highlights are tabs. Now the tabs right here are really not doing much good because it's cutting out material here and here. So these tabs are really kind of worthless. So if I were worried about those parts moving, I would probably separate them more, give them more material in between them, so that those tabs can actually be attached to some material that's left. But I'm going to close this and try to figure out why the bit is not lifting up and why it's scoring across here. So I'll close this window, and it brings me back to this one. And you notice that now this is kind of rotated, and sometimes that happens. So to view it properly, I like to come up to View and then Top. And now I'm going to go into these parameters, and I want to see what exactly is happening with my parts. Why is it not retracting enough? Well, here it says it's retracting 1/2 inch, and it's cutting at 0.75, so I'm going to want it to retract a little bit more than this. So I'm going to change this to 1 inch, and I'll hit OK. I'm going to see if the other ones are similar. So if I go to linking parameters, I'm going to change this retract to 1 inch, and come up here to this parameter and change this to 1 inch also. So now I'll hit OK. You notice it has the 3 X's here, so to get rid of that I'm going to hit this X. And now it's regenerated my toolpaths. I want to view this again on the screen, so I'm going to hit verify selected operations. And I'm going to change this view to isometric. And now we'll hit the play button and see what happens. So that looks a lot better. I no longer see any score marks across the part, so I know we're going to be pretty good there. So we'll hit close that window, and I'll go back here to the top view. And so, like I said, you could move these parts apart a little bit more so these tabs do some good. But say I like what I have, I want to generate G code. So you are going to have to bring save this file and bring it into the Wood Research Lab computer room and actually log onto our computer to generate the G code, because you cannot get the post processor, which is the little program that generates G code. So once you come into the computer lab, you can pull your drawing up, and then to get the G code, what you'll do is click this G1 button. So I click that, and this is the post processor program that we use, and I'll hit OK. You don't need to change anything on this. And now I want to save this. So you generally are going to want to save it on your flash drive or on your desktop or something. But when you actually cut the parts, you will need a flash drive to save this file to take out to our CNC machine. So I'm just gonna let the default name of T, save it to that. Not a big deal. It already exists. Okay, I'll replace it. So now it wants to know the material thickness. It defaults to 3/4, which is what we're using. So I'll hit enter, and then it wants to know the X dimension. So the dimension of our material is 48 for this part, for this project. I'll hit enter, and then 24 for Y. And then we always use 1002 for the fence location. So I'll hit enter. So this is our G code here, and basically anything in green or parentheses is just for your information. The CNC router actually starts reading this black and the red and the blue stuff. So set timer. You could set a timer to find out how long it takes to cut your part. To do that, you would change this to 1. And then here's some information about tangency factor and acceleration, the material size, which is what you entered, this G902. When you entered 1002, it changed this to G902, which tells it basically where the 000 is. And I'll explain some of this to you when we look at the CNC router. And then it says to pick up tool 4, which is the 1/4 inch bit, and it says to turn it on and start spinning at 18,000 RPMs. Go to this XY location, and then says to go to this Z of 1, and then go to this location, and then it says to go here and dive into the material 0.75. and then it goes to another hole and so on. So some some G code is pretty simple and only a few lines, but some are hundreds of thousands of lines long, so it's hard to troubleshoot it all. But I usually look at the first 20 or so lines and look if that seems like reasonable numbers. It's really easy to make a mistake and put a Z of negative 7.5 or something like that, and then the machine is going to try to go 7.5 inches into the table, and it's going to break something. So it's really important that you do look at this and make sure that these numbers do seem reasonable. So I'm going to go ahead and close this, and it already saved it. And then you'll want to save your drawing, obviously, as a different file type. So I hope this helps you on making toolpaths in G code, and please watch my other video where I'll actually show you the CNC router and talk a little bit about that. Thanks a lot.